My name is Rosa Garriga Mora. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager of MICA, which is a provider of mobile apps for events. And today I'm very happy to be joined by Bo Krüger from Moving Minds. Hi, Bo. How are you?
I'm fine. What about you?
I'm very well now, enjoying sunny Barcelona.
Rainy Copenhagen.
Yeah, not quite the same. Huh? But I guess I know that you're coming to Barcelona for the Fresh conference.
Yeah, that's true. I'll be going Saturday, so I look forward to the sun and meet a lot of great people.
Yeah. If anyone from this webinar is also attending at Fresh, yeah, just so you know, we're gonna be there. So I hope we have the chance to meet face to face. So
Yeah.
without further ado, I'm just gonna talk briefly about the agenda for today. So first, I'm gonna briefly introduce who is Bo. Then I'm gonna interview him. I have a few questions that I wanna ask him. And later at the end, this is going to last for about uh, 25 minutes. And then at the end, I'm going to check your questions. But you can already ask your questions if you use the question box that's on the Walk to Webinar control panel. You can ask your questions, and then I will ask to Bo at the end. All right. Yes. So who is Bo? So I met Bo a few years ago. I see him often speaking at events, and I believe that he's one of the best experts in meeting design in the world. Actually, he's as he said, he's from Denmark. He's the founder of Moving Minds, which is a consultancy on meeting design, and he's also a facilitator. He facilitates meetings and conferences. He's a professional speaker. He's a concept developer, improv actor, and writer. So he does many things. And on top of being an expert in meeting design, he also knows a lot about interactive learning, human behavior, positive psychology, creativity, and happiness. He
Oh,
writes
that's a lot.
articles. That's well. That's I think it's. Do you think it's too much?
No, it's fine. It's fun. For me, it's all interrelated, so that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. I think that's why you have such an interesting background. And he writes articles and books on the topics and works with clients all over Europe. And he's also one of the architects of this concept called Meetovation, which you may have known. Meetovation is a concept from Meeting Denmark, and they do trainings for anyone who wants to learn about it. So it is very interesting. So, could you tell us a bit more about what you do, Bo? What is exactly your job about?
Yeah, I will do my best. But maybe I can start with a question for you and everyone out there.
Mhm.
Uh, Remember when you were a kid and people came to you and asked you, what do you want to do when you grow up? And do you remember what you answered to that? Also, do you remember what your answer would be to that question?
Um, yes, I remember I wanted to be a citizen of the world. I just wanted to travel all over the place and know many cultures, and that's what I'm doing.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Actually, it's very seldom people end up doing what they wanted at that time. Myself, I want to be a vet. So I was very curious about animals and want to work with that. But I think the funny thing is, when you ask people, what do you want to do when you grow up? No one says, I want to go to meetings. And the truth is, for many people, at least half of their time at work is spent on meetings. And if you compare that with the fact that we know that most people experience a lot of the meeting time as wasted time or meaningless time, I think we spend too much time on meaningless meetings, and I don't think we are born to do that. I think we should really spend our lives on good, interesting, important things. So that's why I'm interested in meetings. I don't want people to waste their lives. So basically what I do is I help my clients finding ways to engage the participants because I believe it's one of the cheapest and easiest way to increase learning, creativity, networking, a lot of the things that makes meetings really interesting and nice to attend. So, and as you said, I do a lot of different things. I work as an advisor. I also work as a speaker and a facilitator. So, yes, that's my answer to that question.
It's a great answer. Thank you. Okay, so you obviously you are here today to speak about how to work with games and fun elements to motivate event attendees, no? Because as you say, meetings tend to be quite boring, unfortunately. So we need some fun there to make them more engaging. What's a yeah? How do you do that? And what's the psychology behind those processes of using games to motivate people?
Yeah, as you said in the introduction, personally, I'm very inspired from the academic world. I'm very much into the research field of positive psychology, which is a completely new research field which cares about human flourishing and human performance. But I'm also very much into acting and impro acting. I learned a lot from improvised theater, where you have the approach all the time that if you want to learn something, you shouldn't talk too much about it. You should just start doing it out on the floor. So from those two fields, I got a lot of inspirations for all the different games I try to develop and design all the time. And maybe we can switch to slide number 6, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of the research I think everyone in this industry should know about. What you see on the picture is Barbara Fredrickson, and she's probably the leading researcher on positive emotions in the world. She's an American professor of psychology, and she's been studying what positive emotions does to us humans. And if you go to the next slide, you can see some of the main findings there. What we know is if we experience a lot of positive emotions, we in general get more motivated, learn more, get more energetic, more creative, better at cooperating, and we get better at networking because we open up for new ideas, other people, and things like that. And if you look at a list like that, I guess anyone organizing a meeting would want participants to have all these things. So a simple formula for better meetings is actually to create more positive emotions. And if you go to the next slide, yes, you can see Barbara Fredrickson. She's done a lot of research and she's looked into other fields where people done same sort of research, and she found that most people and also most groups could be at work, at home, in a meeting. They flourish if they experience at least 3 times as many positive emotions as negative. And she phrases that as a positivity ratio of 3 to 1. But the truth is that most groups, if you don't do anything, they will experience approximately 2 positive emotions to 1 negative emotion. So what I'm trying to do is to make people flourish at meetings. So I want to increase the amount of positive emotions. And that's why fun is not only about doing something silly, it's actually about this. And it's about creating an environment and an atmosphere where people are able to learn much more, network better, and so on. And if you move to the next slide, the question, that's my son, because kids really know something about positive emotions, because they know that one of the best ways to increase the amount of positive emotions is through play and games. And that's also one of the findings from Barbara Fredrickson. If we want to increase positive emotions, we should play. And the interesting thing about play is that play is so powerful that people can get completely addicted to games, for example, computer games. They can spend all of their lives just sitting there playing and playing and playing. So it's a very powerful form of motivation and energy. And I think if we can learn something from that field and put it into our meetings, then we have something extremely powerful we can use for our meeting. And that's basically what I'm trying to do.
Very interesting.
Then
Well, I'm already sold, but
that's good.
I
That's
don't
good.
I don't see fun and playing much often today, especially in traditional meetings like medical conferences or large trade shows. You know, you just see people in business suits, and they look so serious and just running and stressed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good things are happening there as well. So it's not that all the meetings we have today is bad, but I just want to increase the amount of positivity and creativity and all that. Uh, but the same people in the suits, like me, I'm in a suit right now. When I get home, I play computer games, I go to sports, I watch sports on TV, and so on. I watch game shows. So all of us, even though we might look very serious at work, we love those things. So we just have to find ways, find games and plays which are interesting for adults. It wouldn't work for many adults to do like my son on this picture. I mean, that would be probably too much out of the box. But there are other interesting games we can play. And most people would, when they try to make a game, they actually do some things which I believe is not the way to go. So if you show the next picture, uh, because what we often do is we try to make competitions, which is in my world a very simple and also not a good way actually to create games and motivation. Because what tends to happen is when we make competitions, we think about what it does to the winner, and think and tend to forget what it does to the losers. And the experience for the loser is usually much worse than the competition does good for the winner, as you can see the boy on the picture. So every time we produce one winner in a competition, we also produce a lot of losers. And we know from emotional psychology that bad feelings will hurt you more than good feelings will do you good. So the flip side of competition is that we actually demotivate a lot of people. So we really have to be very careful with competition. And
Mm.
as you can see on the other picture, you also increase often the amount of conflict. Now, if you go back, sorry,
Yeah, that's
yeah, the bike riders, um, because as soon as you create a competition, people they really get tough on rules and they start arguing and discussing things. So you have to be careful.
mm.
Then another thing we do a lot, especially in the meeting industry, if you go to the next one, is that we give people rewards. We do that all the time. And for me, that's a very poor way to motivate people. And you should only do that if there's nothing else you can do. Because what happens when you give people rewards is that you actually kill inner motivation. We know from research if people start focusing too much on outer rewards, on outer results, it kills inner motivation. So whenever we give people gifts for attending a meeting, for doing this and doing that, we actually take the risk of killing the natural inner motivation to learn and do things because people really actually want to do that and we don't have to get rewarded to do that.
Mm. That's a very good
Um,
point because I think that we tend to use rewards very often. I think that's like the easy solution, right? When we want to do something, some gamification, we tend to go for these kind of things, competitions and rewards.
Yeah, so if I can dig a little bit more into the psychology, maybe you can switch to the next slide. Because what we should strive towards is inner motivation instead of creating competition and rewards and all that. Inner motivation is about doing an activity which is rewarding in itself. You do it simply because you like to do it. So you don't have to force people to do it. And that's what fun is about for me. That's when you do things because you like to do it. And that's what you do with good games. You play games because you like it. And if you switch to the next picture,
Mhm.
uh, that's this is two of the leading researchers in the world on motivation, Richard Ryan and Edward Deci, and they found that if you, for example, ask people to make a puzzle, and you have two groups, and you start giving rewards to one group whenever they've finished the puzzle, and the other groups you don't do anything, because people they like to make puzzles. You don't have to give them rewards to do that; they just do it because it's fun. Then if you repeat it later on and just place a puzzle on the table, the group that were used to the rewards, they will stop doing puzzles unless you give them a new reward. whereas the group who liked to do it and didn't get any rewards, they will keep on making puzzles. So that's inner motivations against inner motivation disturbed by rewards and something outside of you. And yeah, that's what game is about. So.
And maybe you've already mentioned this, but could you give do you have some specific examples of games being used at meetings that are very traditional, like medical conferences or academic conferences?
Unfortunately, most of my examples are things I've done myself, but I can give you some very concrete examples here. So if you switch to slide 15. This is a method which a lot of people have successfully used at all sorts of events with all sorts of participants. It's a bingo game. I don't know if everyone out there knows bingo. Very simple game. You get a plate like this with different squares, and the one who fills in all the squares the fastest is the winner. So here you have 16 squares, and in each square you have a piece of information. You give people a plate like this, and then you ask them to go out on the floor and find other participants who fit these informations. For example, one says loves ABBA. Then I have to go out and find someone who loves ABBA. Rosa, do you like ABBA?
Not really my cup of tea, no.
Okay, do you have a pet?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so then I could write your name here. Then I would write Rosa, and then I would continue. And the first one to fill in the plate has won. So this is an extremely good game for networking. And you just instruct people to do this. It's pretty simple, and then it will play all by themselves. You don't even have to give them a reward. I usually just give a very small thing, nothing important. They just play because it's fun. And what happens is you speak to a lot of people really fast, and you get out of your personal little closed circle right from the start. And it makes it so much easier for people to network during the rest of the meeting or event.
Yeah, I can see why. I find it's a great idea and so simple. Usually the simple things are the best, aren't they?
Yeah, and some of the best games are games which you know from another context because people understand it immediately. So often what I do is I take a game which has been very successful on TV or a board game, something like that, and then I adapt it to the meeting because it has already been proven to be a success from TV or in other situations, and people can easily understand it because they know pretty much what the game is about. So if you switch to the next slide, I can give you another example. Most people like to solve mysteries and figure out different tasks, difficult tasks. So here in Copenhagen, we have fam trips like you have in many other countries where you invite meeting buyers to see the venue or the location. And as a part of that, you usually have a lot of site inspections where you go visit a venue or hotel. And a lot of the meeting planners, they tell me that when they've seen 3 or 4 places, they tend to forget them and mix them up. They can't really remember one hotel or venue from the other. So in order to spice that concept up, we created a sort of a murder mystery at a Marriott hotel in Copenhagen, where we told people when they were doing the site inspection, they were going to find clues because we told them there had been a perfect meeting at the site, the best meeting ever, and the task was to find out who was participating at that meeting, what were they doing, and where did the meeting took place. And it was amazing what happened. People just went crazy about this, and they were talking and working on the task all the time. And it was very successful in all the evaluations. It was like the top activity, and it also won a prize as the best meeting activity in Denmark 2 years ago. So that's another way where you can adapt something which is already really popular to a meeting context.
That's sounds like very powerful, and I'm sure people will still remember this activity even after a few years.
Yeah, and that's the point. I mean, to help them remember the venue and get a positive link to the venue as well. And in my opinion, you could do similar things at any convention or also more formal meetings. You can, where people are attending a lot of breakout sessions, you could leave clues all around the venue at different sessions, and all along the day you pick up all these clues, and then at the end you solve some kind of mystery which is related to the topic or the field you're working in. And good games are also about touching the right complexity. So if you're working with scientists and professors, you have to make a very complex game probably to make it fun. If it's too easy, they will get bored. If it's too complicated, then it's not fun. So you have to find the sweet spot right in between.
Mm. Mm. That's yeah. I think that the larger the group as well, like the more people you have in your event, the simpler it has to be, right? Because um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. That's true. It's like traffic. Actually, people can manage in the traffic without traffic lights if all understand the same few simple rules.
Mm.
So games with big groups are a bit the same. Very few rules. Maybe if you switch to the next slide, because I try to describe a few of the things you should consider when making a game. Usually, you should have clear goals so everyone knows where they are aiming at. And usually, games is about going from one place to another or achieving something. Um, and usually, good games also have feedback, so you all the time get information. Are you progressing or are you not? Otherwise, you have no clue how you're doing, and then usually it's not so fun. And then the last one, which is about what we just talked about, usually good games should be easy to understand but difficult to solve.
Uh-huh.
Where bad games are easy to understand and too easy to solve. And then people feel it's childish. Whereas if the game is difficult to solve, then suddenly they are challenged on their intellect, and then it's much more fun.
Mm. I see, and um, yeah, I'm thinking that because it sounds like you adapt every game. Every game is like tailor made to the meeting, which is obviously, I guess, it should be. It depends on the objectives of that event, but is it always so? Let's say, does it always come from scratch, every activity that you do, or are there some simple techniques that you can use and apply to meetings? Let's say for an event planner who is not so creative or doesn't have that much time to think about what games to do. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, if you adapt it to the situation, it's more complicated, takes more time. Often it's better like that because then people really can sense that this was made specially for them, and it's meaningful for in the context and so on. But of course, there are structures you can apply, which is will apply to almost any situation. Like the network bingo, you can pretty much use that for any kind of meeting. But if you continue, I can give you another example.
Okay.
If you go to the next slide after that.
Okay, this one. Yeah. And by the way,
Yeah,
I see we have already few questions from the audience. So just so
yeah.
you know, I will ask them at the end in a few minutes. Okay. But in the meantime, yeah, you can ask your questions on the control panel. So.
Okay. So yeah, uh, I don't know if you can see what is happening on this picture, but this is a game I've done many times, which is really fun. Usually, you at any meeting you will have a speaker or panel, and you will have questions from the audience. And usually there will just be two or three people saying something, and we try all sorts of technologies and so on. But this game is called Snowball Fight. So what I do is I ask all the participants to write down their questions on pieces of paper, and then they should wrap the papers like snowballs. And I ask them to come up close to the stage, and then I count to three, and then they are allowed to throw all these paper balls after the moderator and the speaker. And it's so much fun. People love that. And then afterward, as the moderator or the speaker, I will walk around on the stage and pick up random snowballs and read the questions. So basically, it's a Q&A, but the way you do it is very different. And sometimes I also done the revenge of the speakers, where the speakers made their own snowballs, which they throw back to the audience with questions for them to discuss with one another or in smaller groups. So that's a structure I think you can apply to a lot of situations. And I haven't seen it at a scientific conference, but you could probably do that. Uh,
But yeah, actually, my next question was about that because obviously this is something quite simple but quite new, and you may think that maybe it's not suitable for all meetings. So, do you find it difficult to get the buy-in from the meeting owner?
uh, yes, it is difficult because a lot of people are their main motivation in organizing a meeting is to avoid mistakes and failure. So it's very much a lot of things are driven on fear. And when we do things like this, of course, we take risks because we can't be 100% sure that it will work. But I would say it's like investments. If you take high risk investments, the return is so much higher. So usually what I do is, of course, I try to explain people what can they achieve, and I often do that in more academic terms,
Mm.
uh,
So they take
because
it
if I
seriously.
explain it too much in game terms, it might seem too silly.
Mm.
But in my experience, the best way to get a buy-in, and that's difficult, that's to let people try it, to make them do some of these things. And sometimes when I'm doing a pitch or having a meeting with a client, I will do an exercise as an example. And if I can make them laugh and have fun in the meeting room, it's almost always leads to me winning the task and also for them to be more brave when organizing the meeting. Another thing you could do is to invite them to come and see something. If you have another event where you do something similar, to have the next client come and see it and experience it. Because in my experience, the buy-in is almost always there when people tried it, and then they can really see how good it's working. How good it's working.
That is very good advice indeed.
Uh, but also we also talked about. I like to do a little experiment here. I don't know if we have time for that.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Because I think we still have to work on new methods, new ways to engage the participant in fun ways and make games. I have many, many other examples, but I don't have time for all of them. Uh, but one of the reasons why I have success with this is because I experiment. Because I do things and I see what happens, and then I try to learn from it and then improve. And I don't always succeed, but part of the learning, part of the fun can also be to just experiment and see what happens. I mean, things can be fun even though you don't succeed. So now I want to try a new thing with the listeners here, because in improv theater we have a lot of games, and one of the games is about telling stories, and we have a game called telling a story one word at a time. So
Mm.
one actor would say one word and the next actor the next word and so on. And then you see if you can create a story. So I thought we could do a game here, which is about creating questions one word at a time. So I like to invite all of you out there to try to create a question by writing one word at a time. So if we start with the first word, Rosa, how should they do? Maybe you should explain.
Yes. So, now listen up. As we say, we're gonna practice this exercise, an improv exercise, and we just want you to. We're gonna build all together a question. Would it be a question for you, Bo?
Yes.
Just a question in general. Right. So, and then you have to. So just go to the questions panel, and send me one word. And I see already people sending me. So, for example, Miranda says is, and then there's power. Okay, and okay. So I hope you can all see.
So people are joining in now.
Yes. Sorry. So now we have what is power, technology, and action. Okay, we still have more people that have to send their word. Or if you have sent one, you can send another one as well. Right, that is okay. In bananas.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, maybe we should stop that question there to
Okay.
make
Oh,
it
I'm just gonna
give
add
it a little bit
from
of sense.
accountants. Uh,
I mean, at least it's fun for me. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that. The best question I ever had. What I'm thinking when I see this one is one thing I'm interested in is how you can merge technology with the human interaction. Because I think there's a huge power in both technology and human interactions. And I think we see very few examples where you're actually able to merge those things. And one of the best examples I've seen is the Catchbox, if you know that. That's the throwable microphone, which is like a microphone wrapped in a soft box. So you can throw it around and people can speak into that box. And I'm sure you could make that Catchbox formed as a banana to make it even more fun. And I'm very sure that that would be very successful with many target groups, like accountants, for example. No, but to be honest, I actually think, yeah, that's we should see if we can merge technology and human interaction, and why not do it in a funny way, like that?
That's
Can
funny.
we have one more question? Is that possible?
The next slide.
No, Nick, one more question. Would that
Oh, okay. Yeah,
like?
let's do this exercise one more time. So, okay, so let's all send one more word, please. Can. Okay.
So what you do is you are reading what's coming in, and then you pick some of the words and put it together. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So far,
Um, you
very reasonable so
can
far.
contribute tomorrow to yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Uh, all
in-house.
right.
Okay, let's leave it.
Yeah. Okay. I think we stop it there. Yeah. That's an interesting question. I think it's not about me contributing. I think it's about all of us and the participants. And I think that's one of the things we should consider in the future to see how can everyone contribute to the meeting, and not only the speaker and the experts and the CEO. And actually, you could call it a game. Something I've done many times very successfully is to start the meeting by putting all the furnitures in a big pile in the middle of the room.
Hmm.
And then when people enter the room, the participants, we tell them that you now have 20 minutes to organize the layout of the room. But we have some specific criteria that you should consider. For example, we want group works, we want floor space to do exercises, we want PowerPoint and things like that. And then we divide the groups into smaller groups. Maybe one group taking care of the physical setup and functionality of the room. Another group are supposed to make the room inspiring. Another group will have to make an inspiring entrance and so on. So maybe just that could be a response to that fantastic question.
Great, thank you. I think this must have been challenging for you as well. Huh?
But it's fun
It's fun, yes.
for me.
Mhm.
I think it's fun because I don't know what to expect. And you know, sometimes questions can be very predictable, like how do you create a ROI on blah blah, something like that. How do you measure blah blah? This is more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think we should open up for questions, normal questions, maybe. Yeah.
Yes, we do have a few normal questions. Well, first we have more like maybe like a comment from Abby. She says, she thinks that everyone loves something extra. So could we give rewards that are not presents or gifts?
Yeah, talk about rewards is very interesting. What they found, the Yeezy and Ryan, is if you're going to give rewards, you should not give it for the result, but you should actually do it for the effort,
Mm,
because that's motivating for people. Then they are proud that they did a hard work. Sometimes you work hard on something, but you don't succeed. So you should reward the effort. And I think instead of giving material things, it's better to give maybe experiences or things that helps people become even better at what they're doing.
mm,
So I rather reward them with a learning experience, for example, or something like that,
mm,
instead of just I don't know, uh, uh, an iPad or something like that. But something completely different.
mm,
That would, according to the research, be better.
mm. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense because actually the winner maybe he was just lucky, right? And that's why he won. So.
Ex- Exactly, and sometimes those who work hard are maybe not the most talented, and they never win, even though they're the ones working the hardest.
Mm,
And those who are very talented, they sometimes get really lazy because they find out they can do a little effort and then they can still win. And you also want them to give their best, don't you?
absolutely. Yes. Okay.
Mm.
We have a few questions from Natasha, and well, she. So I'm gonna start by the first one. She asks if you can send more examples about what you've spoke about after the webinar, and especially specifically about the the activity with the crime scenes. And
Yeah.
then she also asks, what are the best books and publications that you would recommend to apply gamification to corporate conferences and large scale exhibitions? And where can we find the scientific academic research that you are talking about?
Oh, yeah. Um, that was a lot of questions. Uh,
I have them all in writing as well, so maybe yeah, it's
yeah, but
better.
very much about the sources. Actually, I know there has been book on gamifications. I cannot especially recommend anyone because I haven't read a lot of them. The way I work is my sources of inspiration are usually games I play myself. So I would recommend that to anyone. If you have some favorite games or TV shows that you like, ask yourself, how can I apply a similar structure, similar rules to a game in my meeting? For example, the murder mystery, that was inspired by Cluedo, if some of you know that game.
Mhm.
It's a murder mystery game. So I built it on exactly the same structure, where you get clues and you try to find out who is the murderer, what kind of murder weapon did they use, and what was the crime scene, where was that, things like that. So I try to use real games to get inspired. Um, and in terms of the more psychological literature, I would recommend at least those two examples I gave. Barbara Fredrickson, everything she wrote is really interesting, and she also writes in a very nice way. She wrote a book on positivity, for example, and she also wrote a new book called Love 3.1, which leads to a very interesting question, which is, can you make meeting participants fall in love? Not physically, but mentally. And according to her, that would be possible. Then we have DC and Ryan. They are more complicated, but if you go searching on the internet on something called self-determination theory, there are a lot of material out there, and that's their motivational theory. And then there's one very important theory which I haven't touched here that everyone who's concerned with games should know about, and it's called the flow theory, and it's created by Csikszentmihalyi. Uh, he explains how you get people absorbed in an activity, which he calls flow, where you completely forget everything about where you are, who you are, and you simply enjoy what you're doing, but at the same time, you usually perform very well. So it's a complete win-win situation. It's nice for the one participating, and it's nice for whoever wants someone to do something important or valuable for the company or the organization. So flow theory, you should read about that definitely.
Yeah, I read that book and I recommend it as well. Okay, we have a couple more questions. One question from Miranda. She says, have you used mobile technology to create games?
Yeah, and I think some of the app providers, they also have, some of them have games within the apps. Agency, for example, they have some very interesting things. They also combine it with magic, which I think is funny. And I have been working myself with a robot company called Blue Ocean Robotics, and they have some telepresence robots where you have a robot on the side, and you can control it from home. So if you can't be there yourself, you can be telepresent. And I actually helped them do some gamification. And the idea was that you could use it like IBTM or a big convention. And then if you can't attend yourself, you just log on to the computer. And then I created a game concept where you had to move around in the convention center to all the stands and maybe solve tasks. For example, you can use like a find Wally game where you have to find certain things around in the area and solve different tasks. So I think there's many ways you can use technology, because a lot of the computer games, I mean, they know so much about gamification. So maybe we need to take some of that out of the computers and more into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have maybe 3 minutes left. Let's take a few more questions, but maybe if we don't have time to cover them all, we'll get back to them offline. Okay. So, a question from Bess. She says, I have a doubt about how to play in a very frontal seminar. This seminar takes place in France, and the people are very reticent when the speaker is a top VIP, VP, sorry, like vice president or CEO. So I guess the question is, if the speaker is top executive from the company, how do you get people to play in front of them?
Yeah, and that's all. I call it the CEO effect. It's a problem in many situations that a lot of CEOs scares people. And it's not because they are bad people, it's just because they're CEOs. They are powerful people and everyone wants to uh, show themselves from the best side to the CEO. So usually it's difficult to make people very creative and experimenting and maybe also very playful when the CEO is around. So sometimes if you want to try something very new, you should think of situations where there's not too many high-level bosses in the room. Uh, that's one thing you can do. And the other thing is if you can in any way make the CEO be the one who is the most playful, because then everyone will follow. So I used to say that if you want people to get out in the swamp, in the deep open water, you should never stand on the land and shout, "Go further out, go further out." You should get out there yourself and you should shout, come out here with me." And that's how you should think. So you should include them. So if you have maybe a playful boss, CEO, I think you might succeed in getting everyone else included. Or maybe think of another situation where he's not there.
Very good. I think that's very good advice. Okay, maybe let's take one last question. Um, if you have time, Bo, I know that you are actually planning some games today in a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to do games here with a lot of meeting planners and meeting buyers in about 1 hour. But I'm fine. It's
Yeah.
I really enjoy this. It's very good questions and very good listeners here. I would love to meet you for real and play some really great games with you.
I'm sure we'll have so much fun. Okay, then let's keep on. We have a question from Annalena. How do you study your audience to find out if a particular game or activity would turn off some people while it may be enjoyed by other groups in the audience? Yeah, so some people
Uh,
and some don't.
yeah, that's true. First thing, expect that whenever you do something different, whether it's a game or engaging the participants or almost anything, there will be some who won't like it. And what I see is a lot of people, they tend to focus too much on those few ones who really don't like it. And sometimes they are very powerful persons because they used to have a lot of space and like the old way to do it, and they would always say whatever they wanted to. So don't focus too much on them. Focus on the rest. Because usually there will be a lot of other people who will really enjoy that you do something else, something which is maybe not the same as you always done, something which is more challenging, something which is more creative, something which is more engaging. So I think first thing is to try to focus on those who's very successful and expect that some people won't like it. And there's no guarantee that everyone will like it. So what I usually do is when I'm trying something else, I try to find a small test group. It could be with colleagues or even home in the family to get an impression: is this going to work? Anyway, no matter how much you practice in the lab, it will always be different when you get out there in the real world. So at a certain point, you just have to be brave. But I can assure you, if you are brave, it will create a lot of fantastic things for you and your participants, and it's really worth the risk.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the main takeaway is we cannot please everyone, right?
Yeah,
That's what.
exactly. Thank you for putting it so simple. I've used a lot of words, yeah, to say the thing.
No, but it's great. Okay, a question from Kit. Do you ever use the games to give the participants input about the actual meeting content, or do you use the games more like a good feeling, a way to start a meeting? Yeah, and they feel good.
You can use this both ways, and I use it both ways. I mean, some games they just simply have the purpose of creating positive emotions, good relations, mature creativity, and things like that. But there are many games you can use where you actually address the content of the meeting. For example, the network bingo, you can put in the squares, you can put different topics which has to do with the topic of the meeting. The snowball fight, which I told you about, is definitely about the content. I have another game which I use very often, which is called 35, invented by an Indian learning expert called Chiaki. You could also look into his stuff, Chiaki, on Chiaki Group on the internet. He's very good. Which is a game where you ask people to write down important things that you're working with, and then you ask people to vote, also in a very funny way. Uh, so there's many ways where you can apply games to the content. So it's not only about just having fun,
Right.
which is also a good reason.
Yeah. It's like the title of this webinar. It's fun and educational games. So
Yeah, sometimes people also go in the other direction and they say everything has to do with the content. Everything that has not to do with that should not be in the meeting. And I don't agree because as I told you, it's also about creating the right group dynamics. And like food, I mean, nice food creates happy participants. and it has nothing to do with the content. But everyone in the industry know that games can be the same way.
Great, thank you. Well, yeah, she says thanks for a good answer. So, thank you. Okay, we're gonna take two last questions. One from Tom. Do you have some examples to engage people at a trade show? How to stand out from the rest of the booths? So, if you are an exhibitor, how do you stand out from the other exhibitors?
Yeah. Yeah, games could definitely be one thing. I've done that many times myself. Usually I'm invited, or many times I have been invited by Visit Denmark to be at their stand at the EIBTM and the IMAX. And I do country presentations, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And usually I integrate small games. And what happens is it attracts a lot of people, and people really remembers that. And there's usually also a lot of good pictures in that. So what happens is that you will get into the convention magazine, because the journalists and photographers, they will run around the site and try to find nice pictures. So whenever they see pictures of people being happy doing activities where they stand up or do something like that, they love that kind of pictures. So it will give you a lot of exposure as well. So definitely games is a good way to stand out.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting, Jan.
But usually what I do is really short games, like 2 5 minutes things. And I, I have a lot of exercises which I call energizers, but you could also call them brain breaks, or even icebreakers, funny games, or jolts. Some people call them jolts, which you can play in 2 or 5 minutes, and people learn something and they have fun at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't take all the content of all the meeting, but it does make a difference. Just
Yeah, for
2 minutes. Yeah, that's great. Okay, and then we have a question from Abby. How do you involve the introvert?
the introvert.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, that's always a good question. But in my belief, I mean, you can distinguish between extrovert and introverts, but I really believe that all people like to communicate. All people like to meet other people. All people like to share and be seen, heard, and understood. But some people are more shy than others. One thing that definitely not works for introvert is having a speaker and then ask out in the audience, do anyone have any questions? So as things are right now, most of the time we do nothing for the introverts. Whereas if you do small games, 2 and 2, for example, a lot of my games is just two people going together, do something together. Usually works with both introverts and extroverts. So it's not so scary for an introvert to do something with just one other person, whereas it's a completely fearful experience to say something out in the large room.
Yes. Yeah, that's also a very good insight. Okay. Would you like to add something else today?
No, I'm happy that all of you listened.
You shared. I learned so much, and I can't wait to apply some of your games and techniques in my events as well.
That's great, and I know you are a very brave person, Rosa. You're one of the persons who's not afraid of trying new things. So that's great.
Yeah, yeah. As you say, we have to innovate, to make an impact. So okay, so well, if you have if thank you everyone. We've had lots of interaction today, and so thank you so much for being there until the last minute, because in the end it's been almost 1 hour, and this has been recorded. So in a few days I'll send you the link to the recording. It's gonna be a video on YouTube, and if you have any further questions, feel free to email us. And yes, I hope you have a nice day, and maybe see you at the Fresh conference, or any of the other events soon. So thank you, and thank you so much, Bo, for your time and for sharing
Yeah, and thank
us
you
so
for
much.
inviting me, and thank you for staying with us. It seems like everyone was staying all the way. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, Bo. Have a good day. I hope your meeting goes very well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.